Okay, so let's try this again. Welcome, everyone. My name is Ty Williams, the project coordinator for Community Education Group. I am your host and moderator. This is Learning Our Roots, a journey through Black Transmasculinity. We have Javon Martin, Mr. Carter Brown, Reverend Lewis Mitchell. We're going to hop right on into it. I'm going to let Javon introduce himself. And just so you all know, Kyler Brodus is supposed to join us. Hopefully he will pop in, but that is a plan. But the show must go on. So Javon, if you can introduce yourself, please.
Alrighty, thank you for having me on this panel. My name is Javon Martin, and I am the founder and executive director of Princess Janae Place, where we house the LGBT community with emphasis on the trans population. We are granted and funded under DOH Public Health Solutions and Gilead to provide our services to house the community. Marcus, you need to flip the video. Also, we are able to go out and give homeless care packages to the chronically homeless population here in New York. And we are forever grateful to the funds from the community that are allowing us to provide these services. And we also started the first homeless walkathon here in New York, which will be August 30th. So I thank you for having me on this panel to discuss really important facts that we need to discuss in our community. And I'm forever happy to be on a panel with these guys.
And just so you all know, we do apologize. We were supposed to be live streaming on our YouTube channel. Unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties, but we want to make sure that this panel did happen. We wanted everyone to see it. So if you can share these on Facebook Live, I'm going to give my panelists a few minutes to share this on their social media since we had a few technical difficulties. That way, this message definitely gets out to everyone that needs to be heard. So if you all want to share this real quick on your social media settings, and then we'll go into our introductions with Carter.
Did you cut your hair?
No, it's the it's my virtual setting with my CEG logo, Community Education Group. So it looks like my hair is cut, but it's not.
Seriously?
Seriously, I would never cut my hair.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to be. This is professional.
Oh, okay. So they Photoshop you a haircut.
You know, are we done sharing? So we'll go back to this. Thank you. Mr. Brown, so since you have jokes, let's go and introduce yourself, Mr. Brown.
Hi. Thanks for having me. I'm Carter Brown. I'm the founder of Blac Trans Men, Inc., which later birthed the Black Trans Advocacy Coalition, which is a coalition of Black Trans Men, Inc., Black Trans Women, Inc., and Black Trans Mix for our non-binary siblings. And all of these entities serve as arms for outreach to those specific subsets of the Black trans community. Our work is focused in peace building, leadership building, as well as providing resources to housing, health, and employment for the Black trans community. I'm really excited about this panel discussion here today. I have not been a part of something like this, and it's truly an honor to be received among the company of such great men and great leaders who've led the path for me, such as Uncle Lewis and Kylar and Javon. So I'm looking forward to actually learning a lot today and hoping that I can teach a little bit. But again, thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir.
A nice haircut, by the way.
Reverend Lewis Mitchell.
I knew if you were discussing haircuts that you weren't talking about me or Carter because we ain't got no hair to cut. But, my name is Reverend Lewis Mitchell. I am the Operations Director at the Ingersoll Gender Center in Seattle, Washington, and also the co-founder of Transfaith. We are not designated by a location. We are everywhere that you'd like us to be. We work with trans people of every identity and every faith, spiritual, and energetic practice. I'm very grateful to be here and to be a part of, and I admire all of you so much. So I expect that the teaching and the learning will be multi-directional, and I'm really looking forward to this. This was my treat after a very hard day at work, so I'm glad to be here.
Thank you all. Okay, so we're gonna hop right into it. This is learning our roots, of course. So one of the questions that everyone has, of course, being Black trans men, a lot of times it's often said that we're not heard or we're invincible. What, as leaders, are you going to do to bridge the gap between the leaders of today and tomorrow, and especially the Black trans brothers that we have? Who wants to start?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead and jump in. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was on mute. So what we are doing, or what Black Trans Men Inc. has done in the basis of our foundation, is to, one, build a brotherhood among Black trans men and connect communities throughout the U.S. and beyond. And indeed, we've been highly successful in doing that because we are sure to maintain our leadership represents the community that we serve. Our organization is completely led by Black trans people. And so we try to reach our focus is on reaching as many variations of trans men, as we know that this is a very a diverse group of men. And so we try to make sure that our leadership represents or shows representation of each identity within our Black trans masculine community. And we want to just really uplift men wherever they are and nurture them and encourage them to be, to get to where they want to be and the type of men that they want to be. We also feel that it's important for us in order to bridge that gap and instill in our future leaders of this community that we have to understand and identify our power within ourselves and how our transness is directly connected to that. And whether a brother wants to live non-disclosed or if he wants to live fully disclosed, there's definitely a way to still connect with your power and your transness, or the transness of your identity. And so we want to we definitely explore ways of how to give back. We definitely know that giving back is really important, and that of all things that I have learned from the elders, like Javon and Lewis and Kylar, is that it's important that visibility is so important to be able to one, see your own reflection and have somebody to connect to in order to navigate this journey. I mean, without a model, it can sometimes tend to be a reckless path for many of us when we find our examples in, of what Black masculinity is, when we lean to the media or, possibly other influences that may not be the best to bring out what the best person is of that being. Mm-hmm. So those are just my thoughts and some of the things that we do with Black Trans Men Inc. in order to bridge that gap and continue to empower Black trans men.
Thank you. Reverend?
Oh, I thought I was not allowed to go next.
I was just about to say, Javon in trouble now.
Yvonne, go right ahead. Okay. So when we think about this generation gap, I want to say that the first thing I want to do is investigate and interrogate what we mean by gap. I actually find that we are not as dissimilar as we're portrayed. And so in the lineage of Black men, there have always been moments when Uncle such and such sat down and played dominoes with the nephew and the young cousins and the little brothers. And I think we exemplify those things. The problems sometimes come into being because we are taught that we are at odds with one another. So the first thing I want to do is really interrogate, what is this gap we're talking about? I don't think we as gappy as people think we are. You know what I mean? And the other thing is that for those who are living in non-disclosure, I think there's a bigger gap between out and non-disclosed sometimes than between older and younger. And what's important for those of us that have been around a little bit is to try to connect the dots a little bit so that no one has to be in isolation. Now, performatively and in the world, that may look like we're disconnected, but it's not about your lens, it's about our lives. So if we're connecting, even if you don't see it, we're doing what we're supposed to do. This is not a parade for who's going to be the most popular Black trans man of the year. This is about, does everybody have somebody that they can talk to? And I want to lift up, my ancestors, Marcel Cook Daniels and Alexander Bear Goodrum and Osiris Coleman. I want to lift up the ancestors that are watching over us as we do this work. We are not the first. We are not the last. All of us on this panel are somewhere in the middle, which is a gift. So I can count on people like BT and others who have been doing amazing work in regional ways with greater or lesser disclosure. And if I can connect them with people that are just now coming to like a BTAC conference, like if you come to the conference, you're so happy to be there. And it's important for you to know that there are others that aren't there that you can be connected to wherever you are. And the final thing I'll say in terms of connectivity, which I don't think is generationally that challenging, is that if we're not in competition, if we're in collaboration and support, we win. That's just it. There's enough people trying to kill us that we don't have to practice shots on each other. And we need to be more open and not get caught in our own cis heteronormativity, be more open to gay Black trans men and queer Black trans men and non-binary masculine trans people, because those of us of a certain generation were raised with such a binary. It's incumbent upon us to stretch. It is incumbent upon us to stretch. So if we stretch and we receive the admiration that's out there for us, we'll be fine. I mean, it's a hard place to be an elder statesman because you can be, let me not speak you, I can be really cranky. The older I get, the less I seem to like people, tell you the truth. And in reality, I don't like people, I like persons. So if we can have a one-on-one or a small group and get to know each other, then I feel like we're set. We're set. And I'm not everybody's answer to the question, but chances are I know who is, and I look forward to connecting you. That's how we build bridges, by dismantling the bridge and just, being arm in arm and being unafraid to be close and intimate and transparent and loving with one another.
Thank you. Before we move forward, Kyler did join us. Like I said, he would be here. You're on mute, Kyler. On mute. Okay. All right. Do you want to introduce yourself? Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, there we go.
Sorry I'm late. I was at a doctor's appointment. So, but I definitely wanted to be with this group, and I thank you for putting this together and having me with this panel. I didn't mean to come in on my brother Lou's speech, so I didn't know if I was supposed to be out or not, and I'm on the phone. I have never done this on the phone, but I wanted to make sure I was here. So thank you.
It's all good. We are prepared for you. We already knew what's coming. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Javon, I didn't know if you wanted to respond to that question as well.
So they summed it up great, but I did want to touch on something about bridging the gap, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what does that look like? Because you have some older trans men that just started transitioning a year ago, right? But they're older than me, you know, and you have some younger trans men that have started when they were babies, right? So what does that look like? Because you're talking about bridging the gap, right? For an elder, someone that may be like 55 that just decided last year that he was going to transition, you have someone that 7 and now they're 15, you know, and has been living their life as a boy into a young teenager. So it's like, where are we going with this bridging the gap? You know, I'm experience, you know, I've 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 followed several guys' journeys, and the whole thing is about acceptance, right? We want to be heard, we want to be seen, and we want to be loved. So I look at it as that, and I'm not trying to diminish anyone's transition and journey, and we just need to love on each other regardless if you just started yesterday or if you have 20, 30 years in the game, right? And that's what we have to remember, you know, because I've been in groups and I've been in online chats, and people are like, oh, here we go, this is trans 101 again. But you have to realize that some people are just coming into themselves, and they're going to have these questions. And yes, if you've been in the game for 20, 30 years, yes, you're going to hear this on and on again. But for them, this is new to them, regardless to their age. So you're going to hear this. And I've, you know, found myself having to walk out because I'm like, oh my goodness, this is overwhelming sometimes. And, you know, Lewis has told me it's okay to tap out. You know, it's all right to walk away. I don't have to be Captain Save a Guy, you know. So for bridging the gap is just acceptance, you know. That's my take on it.
I
You
think,
just have to
yeah, I think so. And I appreciate all of your responses. I totally agree. I think bridging the gap amongst Black trans elders and leaders, this is a prime example of what it is. You know, for me, let me say this. I guess the one question would be what is an elder? What defines elder? Because I think when we think elder, we think age wise, and like you just said, it's not about age wise, it's about experience. So when we talk about bridging the gap, you know, for me, you all are my elders within the trans experience, because you know, those are you all the folks I have looked up to. And so, you know, I'm a hopefully emerging leader. So, you know, we look at bridging the gap between those leaders. How do we do that? You know, I have been blessed to have access to, you know, these organizations, BT, MI, Princess Shanae Plays, have one-on-ones, but how do we bridge that with others? And so I guess the question is, what does define an elder?
Well, for me, an elder is someone that is experienced. My elder is Lewis. My elder is Kyler, right? The two of them have mentored me. So they are my elder. Um, they have been through their journey long before I started or even knew that it was possible. So, for my definition, it's someone that has been going through the journey of transition longer than I have, and that has mentored me. So, those two are my elders, my mentors, my heart, and that's my definition.
Edit it out. You're going to make me cry. You know, D.B. Waters coined a phrase, yelders, young elders, which I think is quite priceless because elder is not how long you've walked the earth all the time. Sometimes, in this era, in this amazing time, when people come out and are able to see themselves and actualize themselves younger and younger, someone might have been walking this journey for 20 years at 34. They know some things that someone who transitioned 11 years ago may not know. They know some things about what's available and what works when you're doing hormone blockers that I wouldn't know. So it's age, it's transition time, it's also specific experiences. So if someone is starting a nonprofit, they're going to want to talk to someone who has started a nonprofit. I could have been transitioned 30 years, but if I ain't started a nonprofit, I'm not your person. And I need to have the humility to know when I am and when I am not the elder in the right situation. There are people that teach me things every single day about things that didn't exist when I started transition. And I need to learn because they're more seasoned in that thing than I am. And so, elder, I don't know. I'm having a mixed relationship with the word elder right now. But I get the point of it. But I think that if we begin to respect each other's knowledge and wisdom and experience, then the age and time of transition become one of the factors, but not the leading factor in what makes a community leader or elder.
And I'll respond to that question if you can hear me. I think that's self-defined for each individual as to who the elder is. And I know it is for me and how I see elders. And it's a combination of things that, Lewis has said and otherwise. But, I know when I teach, even outside the LGBT community, my students may be younger, most are younger than me, some are not. But I don't look at them as just students. I look at it as a transfer between the two of us, and we gain something on each side of the equation. And so it's not like I'm superior to them because I'm their professor. That's why most of my students like me, and that's why they end up becoming my friends even after they're my students. And most of them still follow me, and I can go to any city and they're upset if I don't reach out or they holler at me because of the way I treat our relationship. It's a two-way relationship, and that's how my elders are my mentors. And I prefer the word mentors because elder and eyes were looking just to age. And as the comments have said or been mentioned, I don't think it's just about age, because somebody can be around somewhere for 30 years and never learn a thing, whereas somebody can be around for 5 years and pick up and go and learn a lot of things. So I do think it is holding respect for that person. And Lewis's example of, say, you've been in the movement but never ran a nonprofit, then they would not be the mentor for you to do whatever that is. Or if they have no interest in mentoring a person, even though they have the knowledge, then that would not be the mentor for the person, whatever the person is looking for. There are a lot of things, I send people to Lewis that I choose not to do because I don't have the time to do, because my life is set up differently. And I know that Lewis will take more time with people. For one example, I do triage suicide calls, this, that, and the other. But the way I roll so fast in a different way. Not that he doesn't, but he is more patient and has that time, where I'm returning 1 million calls today for my business. He's going to talk to them and take them in a different way, and he has that time. And so there are different things like, he and I have divvied up throughout our relationship that I know he can do or whatever. And that's just with him, and other people that I know, I pick up that say, I think, oh, they need to talk to Tyree, because Tyree will have pertinent information that they need to know. Again, that's not about their age, but that's about what tool set that they have that I think may be helpful to that person at this particular time. So for me, I think it's, what does that person need? What are they looking for at that particular time? And who has the tools to match?
Thank you. So the one thing I've definitely have learned within hearing this is elders is not a good word. So we're not going to use the word elders right now. It's a little tricky because I think it kind of goes so many ways. I think because let's be honest, when we hear elders as black folks, we think old, we think age. And again, like we just said, it's not about the old, it's not about the age, it's about the experience. So getting to my next question is, all of you are founders and executive directors. What are you doing for your legacy? What are you doing to mold the next? Because I also heard it's accountability, and it's also, we also have to show up as well, and it's about the outs, the people that want to be out and be in, and the ones that are willing to be out there, the ones that are willing to, that want to say that they want to step up and they want to be the next Reverend Lewis Mitchell, the next Carter Brown, or better. What are you doing or helping to pass on your legacy? Because I think we always hear about, the Marsha P. Johnsons, and we know the legacy behind those, but I haven't heard, not saying that we don't, we amongst each other, but when we're going to hear about, the legacy of Reverend Lewis Mitchell, the legacy of Javon Martin, like, we need to be able to, what are y'all doing to make sure your legacy is heard and it's passed on?
Oh, I know. I'm just going to answer this one first and get it over with. I'm the worst legacy builder person because I don't care about that. Like, when I'm dead, y'all can figure out how to describe me. You're my legacy. The fact that y'all are living and breathing and I can count on you to do what you do and you can count on me to have your back, you're my legacy. Right now, I'm about sustaining individuals, not about legacy building. I don't care about that. Legacy for me is really the thing that people remember you by. I'm still here. Don't remember me. Talk to me. Touch me. Don't remember me. Remember me later. I mean, I am minutes away from, well, not minutes, days away from being 60, which is 120 in trans years. So I really, every time a Black trans man starts something, does something, is recognized for something, whether I like what they're doing, whether I like them, I want to support what they're doing because I dreamt of you. When Marcel and Alexander died and Kyler and I found each other going, oh shit, now what do we do? I felt like first I felt like there was only me, then I felt like there was only the two of us, and then I met some others that Kyler knew. Now there are hundreds of us doing amazing work, art, business, nonprofit, just ministry, just amazing work. You are my legacy. You are the people that I believe that I prayed and dreamt into being. And so you're already there. Every time I see you do, Javon, every time I see you do something great, Carter, every time I see you do something great, Tyree, every time I see you do something great, you are celebrating the dream, my dream come true. So if you all are my legacy, I win. I get to celebrate my legacy while I'm living. That's much more important than anything that I might be remembered for.
Thank you.
So yeah, I would definitely agree with Lewis that the legacy isn't a matter of what you do, but the impact that you have on people. It's the everyday interactions that you have and the impressions you leave on people, whether they leave feeling empowered or if you leave them with the negative, then that's part of your legacy as well. But I aim to definitely empower as many people as possible, although the work is focused or was founded primarily for Black trans men. The work that we've done as a collective and as a community for the Black Trans Advocacy Coalition has had a reach far beyond just what I can do. As far as many people that I've interacted with personally is minimal in comparison to the people that have been impacted by the overall work and love that BTAC offers, just through community building and through social interactions, through the conference, et cetera. And so I feel like the business part or having the organization is just the way to reach as many people as possible, but that is not the heart of the work that I do or that we do. And but I do see that being beneficial in a part of my legacy or our legacy, in that it inspires other young men. I mean, since I've been a part of the community and started the organization, and what I can identify, I feel that a lot of people have been inspired, to start their own groups or organizations, when they see, hey, Black Trans Advocacy Coalition or Black Trans Men Inc., is doing something really great. I want to do something for my community or, a population of this community that I feel I can reach out to. And I feel that is a very important part of the legacy of the legacy of our community as Black trans men, because again, or in support of what Lewis was saying, how at one time he felt it was only him, then he felt it was only him and Kylar. But once they were able to make those connections and build community, that's how we multiply, and that's how we get stronger as individuals and as a community. So I just hope to continue riding the legacy and the lessons that have been left for me by the other gentlemen on this call. I just hope to continue to leave that for the others that are now walking with me and behind me.
Thank you, Kyler. I saw that you were talking. Sorry about that. You're on mute. You gotta unmute your phone. There you go.
Okay. I couldn't see a mute button or unmute button, but if Javon needed to go, that's okay. I didn't mean to disrupt the order, but I didn't intend to leave a legacy. Again, I think the work I do, I've not been vain about keeping every speech I've written. I know lots of trans people like that, and they've said, why don't you do that? Because I am in the moment. I speak from the heart. It's about saving lives. And sort of like Lewis said, because when I arrived and would be in places, I was the only Black trans man in most spaces. And my goal was to have access for everybody, regardless of their gender identity, expression, or whatever it was, male, female, non-binary, gender non-conforming. It was to break down that door so that everybody could come in those doors. And that was my thought, being from the civil rights movement of the 1960s and growing up in that era. It was about breaking down doors. It's like, this is baloney. Why aren't we here? and why aren't we a part of this stuff? And so that was my only thought, and still is one, are we saving lives or making laws and legislation to do that? Two, if I'm needing to help people on the street, and how can I do that? Then that's what I'm doing. I never intended to run an organization of any sort of kind. There was no trans organization of any color out there. I kept nudging other young trans people to do it at the time. So TPOC was my goodbye to the community, because I'd done tons of trans work across the mainstream and LGB work as well. So I'm familiar with every letter. Before the G was before the L, and when they moved the L to begin the LGBT and all of that, you know, I've been through the whole movement, all the movements. I like to remind people there are movements, because we want to act like there's one movement, and they're not. There are many movements that are happening. And now we're in the queer movement and the trans movement, which has been co-opted by gay people. And they have to be reminded of that when we ask them to be allies, not take over leadership of the trans movement. And so there has to be an eye on that. So I never intended to be the leader of any group. TPOC has been a training ground for lots of young activists. And now Brendan Watts is the executive director, and I'm so happy about that. And young people will be taking the reins as it should be. I'm glad for TPOC that then right after that cropped up tons of young POC groups of all sorts. You know, particularly Black. We were not trying to be Black because we had no numbers in those days of how many of any kind of trans people there were in the United States. There were just no numbers. So that's why it was an umbrella of trans POC, which came from Tupac, by the way. Tupac was based on Tupac, one of my favorite rappers. So, yeah, there are many sides to Kyler. People just assume there's one. They see a little high yellow Negro in a suit and they want to make assumptions. But, you know, there are many sides to Kyler. And if people roll with Kyler, then they get to know Kyler instead of make assumptions about a Kyler. And what Kyler has been doing in this movement. You know, I started representing all people out in the middle of the United States when there was nobody representing them, pro bono, and I've lived many lives in the movements. So, you know, apparently there is a legacy. You know, it shocks me when I get awards to do this work, because when we did it, there was no money in doing it. We had to pay to go do it. And a lot of times, as I tell the truth now, I would sneak in places to do it. Yeah, we would if we couldn't afford to get in. Where now activists are paid. So there's, you know, there are a lot of nuances and differences to how this work is done, but we were not paid, and we would not go away until they recognized transness and to let us in. And then I was there to make sure, you know, there's going to be Blackness. I didn't go away, and I never go away. I'm like the Energizer Bunny, although I may be at the end of my lives. I don't know, and I hope not. But, you know, so my goal is to see more diversity and more unity within our Black, brown communities, instead of the diverseness and the competitiveness that I see that has occurred, because we quelled all of this in the 90s and the early 2000s, and it cropped back up in the late 2000s because we were working together. There was no divisiveness between any trans people. We worked together, and that's how we were able to make strides. And honestly, that's how the gay movement has been able to make strides. And until we can come together, I don't see us moving forward and really making gains, because we've lost all the gains pretty much that were made during the Obama movement, while this clown has been in office undoing them quickly. And while we have visibility is good, but visibility alone is not enough. And so we have to have unity, and we have to have strategy. And so I would call on the community particularly to do that, communities, and it's going to take just more than us. We have to rely on allies, and I know people in particularly not the trans masculine part of the community, but the other part of the community that don't think allies are useful. And I've done lots of actions, and allies are very good to help us do things. And we've just got to have unity. So that's what I say. And it's not about building what legacy I have or what legacy that's left anywhere. Because, you know, if people remember me, great, but I'll be dead and I won't know about it. So, but thanks for the question. And again, I'm always surprised to get an award. And it's not about getting an award, a t-shirt, or a bumper sticker, or even my legacy. It's about not having another trans person die tomorrow or tonight. It's about getting them off the street and saving their life. So, thank you, brothers.
Thank you. So, sorry about that. So with that being said, should we be pressing our elected officials to stop making gains by executive order, or start pushing for legislative solutions? Because I hear that, like, it seems that the major problem is with policies, and of course we know that's all across the board. When we look at, I'm trying to frame how to frame this. When we look at where we are Black men, and I think oftentimes that we forget that yes, we are Black trans men, but our Blackness comes first. So, and I guess I asked that with the latest events of George Floyd's death, Tony McDade. There's a elephant in the room that we miss, that sometimes us being stealth is a part of safety. And I know you all came from different eras, different generations. You know, the 80s where, you know, the AIDS epidemic was very heavy or whatnot, and you know, it was just with gay men. Now we're getting to a time where we're seeing the AIDS epidemic move around and whatnot, but we're Black men first. And right now I feel like we're in a movement where Black men are being killed left and right, but Black trans men are kind of left out the conversation when it comes down to we're defined as men and our Blackness and our importance in our existence. So I guess, how do you all feel about that with so many different intersections? And I guess that's why the question is, was policy and legislation, like, how do we change that or fix that? Because we know it's bigger than us.
I want to invite Carter or Javon to answer because they haven't said anything.
I want Javon to answer.
So thank you. I actually spoke about this last night on another panel, and recognizing, you know, becoming a Black man, and also recognizing the fact that as my journey, I didn't understand what it was becoming a Black man, right? I was just liberated that my insides match my outside, right? But it actually hit me when I walked into an elevator and there was a young lady there, and she grabbed her purse and moved to the side. So me becoming a Black man, I became a threat to society, and I had no idea that that's what was going to happen. So once that clicked for me, I found myself wanting to become a positive image of a Black man, right? Because I used to walk around with jeans and sneakers and t-shirts all the time, but that's perceived to be a threat. So if you dress up and you wear a polo shirt and dress pants and shoes, you don't come off as much as a threat. You come off more as a businessman, right? So therefore, the young lady in the elevator that's standing with me, she's not thinking that I'm going to rob her, you know, because it's unfortunate that that's how it was, but that's how it happened for me. So I became a businessman. I started working for the city, right? And having my MTA uniform, that was safety for some people, you know? So on a higher level, Kyler put me out there to learn more about the policy and the procedures on a federal and state level, because I had no idea, you know. And then once I started learning more about the laws that were against us, that that they were using, it was walking while black is a problem, right? Here in New York, the police are not only um, just so discriminatory against black people. When they find out that you're trans, they misgender you as well. You know, more trans women find this, you know, a problem than the trans men. But as soon as they find out, it's a problem. And our own community outs us. That makes it a problem. So being in a relationship, for me, I'm keeping it on me, being in a relationship um, with a woman, and then you have an argument and the police show up, and then they'd be like, oh, well, that's a woman, you know? So that's an issue for me. So our laws and our policies that are in place now, we need to enforce them. You know, we have passed gender here in New York, and we have not enforced it in the housing, in the medical field, in the legal field, just period, in the business. You know, because people are being discriminated against. We just had a one of the trans guys fired from his job for being trans. You know, and it's horrible. Like, you, this is passed here in New York. So why was he fired? And where is his rally? You know, where is the hundreds of people coming to his defense? When you're a trans guy, you don't get the same amount of people rallying for you as if this happened to a black trans woman. Why is that? There's power in numbers. And we show up for the trans men twofold, and we show up for trans women more, you know, but we need that reciprocated, you know. And as far as in the policy and the laws, I'm there. We were there for marriage equality, you know, so we need our allies to come and be here for us. And that's all I got.
For me, and that's a question I answer often, as far as, do I fear for my safety because I'm trans? Every time that, you know, one of our sisters are taken and the media comes around and, you know, wants to get our stories and hear our voices and so forth, then that's pretty much a common question. Do you fear for your safety because you're trans? And my answer is always no, I don't. I honestly fear my life because I'm a black man, and that's what's presented first in every situation. I'm not trans until I say so. And even still, black masculinity remains a threat, even in a trans body. And so that has been my experience, and that's how I have to navigate socially. And that's how I also, or how I feel black masculine or black trans men have to implement themselves when we talk about changing legislation and policies. Because, you know, as you stated, Ty, we are in, you know, a multi-dimensional fight. I mean, we're first fighting racial justice, and we're fighting transphobia, and we're fighting homophobia. Many of us are fighting anti-blackness. Many of us are fighting because we're in a lower class. And these are all things that are directly tied to both our blackness and our transness. So it's really not a way to separate, you know, to say that I have more privilege in this area than this area. You know, at the end of the day, you know, I identify with, you know, we have multifaceted identities. But we always lead with black masculinity, which is, you know, been seen as a threat in every way. So that's really the challenge is, for me, that's been the challenge in my journey as a Black trans man, is that I went from, an analogy would be that I went from being a 11-year-old boy to now having to be a 45-year-old man. Once I transitioned, it was expected that I would have the same level of experience, knowledge, and know-how as other Black men my age, when I had not, because I was socialized totally different. And my experience and my journey has far many more dimensions than just, I was born a boy, I was raised a boy, and I was, and this is how I adapted. And so that has really been the most challenging part of my journey, is just finding my way to navigate being a Black man in America, and having the trans component tied to it, and still needing that guidance, as all men and boys do, of how to get into manhood. But because I have that trans component, then I also need specifically a Black trans man who can help me navigate this journey. And so that's why it's really important that I do have people like, Uncle Lewis and Jonathan Thunderword, and brothers that'll take the time out for me and just have those honest conversations that I cannot have with my, cisgender male counterparts. And even living, I've had the experience of living both, quote unquote stealth, as well as living out. No experience has a more positive or negative impact on me. But I do know that when I lived non-disclosed or stealth, that was a very empty life for me in my journey into manhood, because it was more so, I was learning the performance of masculinity. I was not learning who I was as a trans man and what trans masculinity looks like. And I couldn't really connect with that until I could see my own reflection in another trans man.
Thank you all so much. So I have one more question, and then we're going to answer questions from the audience, okay? So my last question for you all is, how do you feel about the visibility of HIV education and prevention and amongst the trans community, especially the Black trans men, and the ones that are living with HIV that feel as though they cannot disclose who they are and be who they are because of the stigma amongst the Black man in America?
It seems to me that as much as things change, they stay the same. You mentioned earlier about HIV being a primarily gay thing. It's never been primarily a gay thing. It has been a thing for people that have unprotected sex, and those who pretend that somehow love and religion and straightness are great prophylactics against the virus. So there have always been people, Black men of every origin, who have seroconverted and lied about it and kept it secret. And I think until we begin to talk about sexism and homophobia and transphobia in Black male communities, regardless of origin, we're always going to have the same shame that comes from not being able to tell the truth about yourself. 15 years ago, I talked about trans men seroconverting and how those rates were going to skyrocket as soon as they decided they would stop misgendering us and test us appropriately. Because when I'm not going to out anybody that's coupled. So I'll say if you're single, although everybody coupled ain't faithful, but that's a whole other story. If you're single and you're just starting hormones, you're horny as hell and you don't even care. And if you love women, you might go experiment with men because they don't offer the possibility of a relationship. That's just hit it and keep moving. And if that man you're with decides that you're less of a man, if you want to use protection, you're not going to use it. And you're not going to tell anybody about it. You're not going to tell your doctor. You're not going to tell the people you're dating because you're ashamed that your hormones led you to experiment with a sexuality that you don't claim. Part of the challenge with terms like homosexual is that it's very limiting. Most of us, our sexuality is opportunist. Where we are in terms of our emotional and relationship stuff, where our heart lives, that speaks to our romantic ideas. You know, not everybody does this, but there are probably as many trans men newly hormone juiced up that are on all these apps trying to get it in because they got an itch to scratch. It's not about liking dudes. It's about availability. It's about not having to, worry about flowers and language and candy and where to date and whether I shaved. Because really, honest to goodness, in the middle of the night, dudes don't care. Like top, bottom, both. Okay, bye-bye. So as we talk about HIV, and I'm going to speak as a minister here, one of the things that's deeply problematic for me is that we in the church are so, can I use the words I want to use? We're so chicken shit in talking about bodies and sexuality that we're allowing people to die. Embodiedness is a part of our sacredness. It is a part of our spirituality. And until churches begin to talk about sex and embodiedness, Black folks are going to die, straight, gay, cis, trans, all points in between, because we cannot tell the truth in a place where we cannot be open without shame. So I think that transfers and trickles down to Black trans men. If you're a Black trans man and you got an itch to scratch, you ain't got to tell everybody, but tell somebody. You can tell me because I ain't going to judge you. Do your thing. Call me up in the middle of the night and say, look, I had some unprotected sex, Uncle Lou. What do I do? We'll talk about it. But you do not have to be in secrecy and shame. The other thing I want to say to you, and I want to be clear, even though I invited you to tell me and tell somebody, everybody is not going to keep your confidence. Find someone trustworthy. You find out they're trustworthy by how often you hear them talking about other people. Find someone trustworthy so that you can know that your confidence is safe and get the support you need so that you know how to take care of your body. We don't have to die at the hands of police, but what a horrible thing if we manage to survive that and we die because we don't get proper medical care for whatever our conditions are. It's not necessary. Let's find ways to support each other in our body, in our lives, in our spirits. We don't have to do this alone, even if you're non-disclosed. So I'm done.
I would like to add to what Lewis said there. And I think this, and I appreciate you bringing this question forward because it's really important that we do start having more conversations about this, specifically in the transmasculine community. Because as it stands, I believe the last reporter survey was 2014, that the CDC did a survey of trans people. And now that we are mostly being properly gender identified in these statistics, of all positive cases of HIV of trans men, 58% of those were Black trans men. And we're not having enough conversations about this for, all the reasons that Lewis said. And what we're doing as far as in my opinion, what I see happening often in the Black trans masculine community is that we're pretty much replicating cisgender Black men and what, the stigmas are around any sort of male-on-male sexual contact or preferences, shame around positive cases, shame around being rejected, and not asking if there's going to be any sort of protection in the engagement. And so, I'm at a loss of how we can build a more supportive community where we can support each other in these conversations of, not only what do we do now or how to avoid getting it, but what makes us, what creates the grounds for the decisions that we make to put ourselves in these positions. Because, I mean, HIV has been around, and it's enough information, it's enough resources that we all know, you know, that it's a possibility for us and how that becomes a possibility for us. So what makes us make those decisions that would put us in those positions, and how can we support each other more so that we can make healthier choices and can live healthier lives? But as well, I feel that there needs to be more access for trans men who are positive with HIV into getting the help that they need, whether that's, you know, you go to a conference, you know, any HIV conference. You know, I've done many speaking engagements at many HIV conferences simply because they have no information for trans men. There aren't any trans men there when I do go. You know, so where do trans men go when they need resources and they feel comfortable going? You know, even at our conference, you know, we have to be more mindful. We're making a greater effort to be more mindful that we do include trans men in, you know, when we talk about health resources and information about health and sexual health and, you know, healthy sexual orientation and things like that. So, you know, again, I'm absolutely concerned with the numbers, because again, that was in 2014. And so here we are 6 years later, and I don't see that there is more conversation, or, you know, you see ads for Truvada and everything else. And again, the Black trans man is absent from these messages and from these the resources and access that's available. So that's something that I feel that we will definitely need to work collectively as a community in order to support one another more when it comes to HIV and how it affects Black trans men.
Javon? Sorry.
Kyler wanted to say something. I saw his hand.
You're on mute, Kyler. Unmute. Hold on. Tap it. There you go. Oh, wait. Hit it one more time. Tap to unmute one more time.
Those doggone iPhones, I tell you.
Yeah, it's tap. It's a finger. It's like this.
Well, let me just say what I wanted to say really quickly.
Maybe you can hop in.
Oh, wait, he's got it. Don't touch it. He's got it. Go ahead, Kyler.
Go.
All right. Thanks, Javon. Real quickly, I want to say part of the problem is that the overall Black population has huge scores in HIV, which is sad. And, you know, I've been working with some of the young Black men, and none of us should have numbers like this after the AIDS crisis. So it's a mindset that's been placated in our whole Black community. But yes, we should address it with trans men. But I just want to give you some history on it. We actually, and it was one of them, we're working with the CDC, and we were booted out after our counterparts came in because the CDC didn't know who the heck they were talking about, which one of us they were talking about. And so then we were kind of kicked to the curb when this work began, and it was taken over. So because I kept saying, who are you talking about? And they didn't know who they were talking about for the longest. And this was into the 2000s and the late 2000s. So still the CDC has some issues with this, and the governmental agencies. So it's not just us. And I think we have to be aware of it. And that's, again, where history comes in, which is not so short ago. It's very present that the CDC doesn't have all of its ducks in a row. and is receiving improper information. So I think that has to be one of the components that's taken into account. But we do need to have this information, and there are more trans men representing, but that's this whole divisiveness thing that's going on within the community that's disjointed and dysfunctional that's happening, because we were attending the CDC meetings together, and then all of a sudden there were no trans men invited to the CDC meetings. So that's just for historical sake. So we got shut out of those meetings. And so that needs to be reopened again. And that should never have happened. But again, we're competing with ourselves, and nobody's going to divide us when they come kill us. And it's the same thing as when I have said that Black people were being killed because we're in the places that people kill us, and people only see and say trans women. And yes, it's been Black trans women, but we start to see the Black trans men bodies. And nobody said a word and didn't believe me when I said Black trans women. And younger people don't want to hear that and saying that I'm talking negatively about trans women when these are just the facts, because that's what I've worked and seen throughout my career. And that's the way it's happened. And so my point is, yes, we do need this, but we also need to know that we have to be working with the CDC and not get booted out of the group again with the CDC, and deal with interaction with other people in our community so that dysfunction doesn't happen again. And the CDC needs to be educated on who trans men are. So it's not that we were never, that it was that designed exclusion, and I'll leave it at that. And so, again, and the last point I want to make is lots of men are now choosing to sleep with trans men because it's a thing, and it's huge, as well as trans men making those decisions. And also we have to add in the fact that lots of trans men are having sex with trans women that have not transitioned their lower parts, that have HIV rates as well. And I think that's part of the equation that has to be added in as well. So how are our people making decisions? And I'm hearing lots. I hear lots all over. And we have to talk about that. Most of these men don't feel empowered to make lots of decisions. And so some of them are choosing to make decisions, and others are choosing or cajoled into decisions that maybe they're not making. And so we need to have these discussions, and we haven't been allowed to have these discussions in open because of fear of them being taken back to other parts of the community, and that stuff has to stop.
Okay, so I want to touch a little bit on that. The house and ballroom scene have been talking a lot about this and have been having panel discussions on this for the past 2 years, right? This comes into play with substance usage, right? Also, it's a known factor when that Descovy and Truvada, Pep and Prep, it says on the commercials and the bottles, it says that they're not for trans men, right? So it's specifically for men who have sex with trans women. So it's the whole MSM thing, and how they I know, Lewis, I know, but that's how it's worded. And from being a part of the PPC from years ago, the Prevention Planning Group, they changed the name. That's how it's categorized in the CDC, right? And that is an ouch moment, for trans women, right? And it's just how you said it, Kyler, that those that have not had GRS, gender reassignment surgery, for the lower extremities, and it saddens me, right? Because they need to open up these doors so that there is space for the trans men, and for any type of sexual activity with cis men, right? Because it's not just I'm trying to be politically correct here, front hole sex. Some trans men only have back hole sex, right? And that's still, an issue, right? So we need to talk about this, and it has not been talked about, but in the house and ballroom scene, we've seen many gay men, pass away from substance usage due to sexual activities and the uses of meth, amphetamines, and this has been going on for a while now, so the trans men are also engaging in the substance usage and these sex parties that go on for 2-3 nights straight. They're not thinking, oh, let me grab a condom or something like that. They're juiced up, as Lewis said. They just want to have sex. I've been there when I first came out, started being on testosterone. All I ever wanted to do was have sex. I didn't care who I was getting it from. It was just sex. I just needed to relieve that urge that I just had to get it out. I didn't care. And it's I could talk about it now, and I've learned the errors of my ways, but there are some guys that are like, oh, I gotta have it, gotta have it. And I'm like, dude, you need to slow down. Just slow down. Relax, breathe, But who am I to, tell someone what to do with their body? And these discussions are happening, but there need to be more discussions like here, like Carter said about in the HIV, what was it? Different, oh my goodness, the word just escaped me that fast. But anyway, where we was at, like in DC,
biomedical,
when in DC, the conference. That's what the conference. So we had the option to have this conference and this group for trans men, right? And the person that was supposed to conduct this group for the trans men never showed up. You remember Ty, right? So we had to have our own group, and we made our own group, and we brought as many guys as we can to the group, and we got the demographics down. And that was the beginning of what's going to happen, moving forward with this conference, the inclusion of the trans men. So Carter, when you go to these conferences and there are no trans men in these spaces, talking about HIV and AIDS, start that, make that known, and be like, hey, next year, make a space for us, and I'll bring the guys. Just make it known that we need to have more spaces at these HIV conferences for trans men. Synchronicity 2021
right? So
is coming.
so for the record, the organization that was going to present at the conference, the USCA conference, they actually have stepped up by hiring me to make sure, because that same person gave me the job, which is community education group. This is presenting this topic right now. So I'm glad you said that. So that right there is a step up right there. We, again, Javon, as he said, we have asked a few questions, that, and from that built a relationship. And that's my executive director, Tony Young. And she is phenomenal and supportive, because I would not be here presenting with you all right now. I think with all that being said is that I think that's definitely a call to action that we have realized on this conversation. I think let's not talk about elders. Let's talk about getting the Black men, the Black trans men, health and disparities right. I think addressing those is what we need to do. And I think that's the gap we need to close, because if we don't have our health, we don't have anything. And knowing that even when like I said, people go through different stages of being comfortable. I think being a Black man, we have been oppressed within the systematic of knowing that cis men and that toxic masculinity, or I can't say that gotta be a down low. We have kind of picked up some of those traits, and some of those traits have been picked up because of safety. And as well as we have to acknowledge that, for some people, that's for some people. I'm not saying that's for all. And we also have to realize that sex work, trans men do sex work. And I think that's one thing that we don't want to talk about. And I'm not saying that it's a problem, but we also have to be able to talk about sex positive. Is that, you know, what you do is what you do. I'm not knocking, but are you safe in what you do? Just offering that, hey, if you want to be out here 3 days, you know, having these parties, that's fine. And then I'm not here to judge you, but I want to know that, do you have your prep? Do you have your condoms? What do you need? That's all. And don't have a word about being judged. And like Lewis said, that you can't tell everybody and everyone's not going to support that. So you have to find these spaces where you can. But as well as you have to find these spaces where you be comfortable to tell your doctor, you know, hey, this is what's got going on. And that, you know, and so there's so many intersections that plays a factor in that. But I think we have narrowed down that we need to have this conversation. And this is way bigger than just, you know, a gap. This is more of our health in our lives. Because, I mean, the Black gay men, we have the Black trans women. We now have Black cis women that are now number one. Who's next? It's everybody's Black. And we're getting all these genders, and the next one's going to be Black trans men. And it's like, why would we wait till it be an epidemic to where we can stop it first? So I'm going to go ahead and answer a few questions we got from the crowd. So one question is, so how can our allies be good allies without co-opting the movement from us?
You know, Google that. Really, like, I'm gonna tell you this right now. That's a great question, but don't waste this valuable group of time trying to figure out how to be an ally. You Google that. Ask us some questions about who we are, not about who you should be. The one thing you can do initially is stop centering yourself. Like, how you gonna have 5 Black trans men on here and you start asking about allies? Go Google that. I'm sorry, that was rude, but really, this is not the time for that. We appreciate that you care. But we so rarely get centered that to decenter us to figure out how to be a better you. Mm-mm.
And I want to say, Ty, that thank you for this group discussion, because this is how you make it happen, by having more group discussions, right? That's how you tackle the issues, by coming together and talking about it. So this right here is very important, and we can come back and do this again with another group of guys, right? You did the elders, so do some of the younger guys, the newer advocates.
Oh, I just, you know, y'all, this is the beginning. This is just the beginning. Trust me.
Right, and I also want to highlight the fact that just as you did with how that happened at the conference, and you got a job out of this, and you made this happen. This is where we have to do this at all places where there are no trans men. So we have to make our voices heard so that they can make programs for us, right? And this is how you start. You just show up. Hashtag show up.
Yeah, so great point, Javon. Before we go too far from the last question, I wanted to respond to Javon and co-sign and saying that, you know, many of the places that I go to speak, I look on the internet and find HIV conferences, and I submit proposals specifically about statistics of trans men and how trans men contract. I would love to see more Black trans men take initiative and do that. We have to find ways to insert ourselves. We can't just say that, you know, I'm trans, so I'm going to do all I can do in the trans community. Because again, as Black men, we have to make sure that we are being counted in that arena as well. And really quickly, I just wanted to, since we're talking about resources for trans men, currently BTAC is still operating our COVID rapid relief program, which offers also safe sex supply care packages. And that includes condoms both for external genitals and internal genitals, as well as lube and, you know, whatever precautionary prophylactics you feel you need to make. Free of charges, please log onto our website and just ask, and we'll get that shipped out to you. Your safety is first. And that's it.
Thank you. All right, another question. Okay, what kind of advice can you give regarding how one gets involved in advocacy work? I don't belong to any organizations and have limited access to my trans brothers. I think Mr. Brown might have answered that one with Black Transmen Inc. Get involved with BTAC in that conference. I mean, if you want to go ahead and let them know what that is, definitely can Google it. They have Black Transmen Inc., which is phenomenal. They are definitely across the nation. We have different chapters, and Mr. Brown can tell you more.
Yeah, tell them about the Akani, Carter.
Thanks, Javon. I'll do that. No, but really, I appreciate that because many of us, or every guy on this panel, has mentioned something about mentoring, that they were mentored or they have a mentor, etc. So I don't know, and I'm sure Uncle Lewis can probably expand more on the theoretical part of if our desire, if our connection to masculinity holds a desire for fraternity. But I know that for trans men, having a mentor, having a connection to brotherhood is very, very important. That's something that we started when we started Black Trans Men Inc., and it's currently being, we've recently resuscitated the program that's being led by Mr. Maddox Jackson. And so peer-to-peer mentoring Akani is the name of the mentoring program, which offers peer-to-peer mentoring for one-on-one relationship, as well as we offer group support in confidential and safe settings, virtually as well as in person when it's socially responsible to be in person once again. And so what we try to do is, of course, establish goal building, and just support that, and overall just creating a community and trying to a strong support system and a community that of course can help every man be the best that he can. Again, our motto with BTMI is one is not born a man, he becomes one. And so just that word become says it's an ongoing journey. We all have to become something. A baby becomes a child becomes a teen. So the journey of development into your manhood is never complete. And so we hope that by connecting you with this mentoring program, that you're able to connect and build relationships that will continue to support you in your journey, even if it's not, the group of guys that you met and started with. Again, it can stem to other relationships that can be something that is definitely something that you need. So again, for our Akani program, if you want to sign up, that's going to be blacktransmen.org and /mentoring.
Kyler?
Both of y'all on mute.
All right. Can you hear me?
There you go. Okay.
All right. There are other mentoring programs. I know it depends on where you live, and people have to have mentorship in different ways. And so, you have to figure out what you're looking for in a mentor. And I think that's the first step for anybody that's seeking a mentor is what are you looking for? And you need to sit with yourself and figure that out and what works for you. Some people do long distance mentoring and it works for them. Some cannot. So you have to figure that out first of all, and then decide what program is going to work for you. I know there's BTAC. There are some fraternities out there. There are some community centers where it's Black enough for people to be, but you have to do some research, and BTAC is one group. There are other groups out there that are doing that, and that might appeal to your demographic. So you have to figure out what works for you, and that's what I tell people that are looking for mentorship anywhere. I may not work for you because I work different. I'm like a drill sergeant. Lewis is not like a drill sergeant. So you need to be certain as to what works for you and what is a good fit for you. And I think then that determines how comfortable you'll be with whatever mentorship is out there for you. And also, we always look to live within a trans. I see this because people see OGs and we're around and we do stuff in the trans movement. I just want to caution people, and I've said this to a lot of people, you don't have to live a trans life. And what does that mean? That you're living in the center of transness all the time, because that will drive you crazy. And it tends to drive people crazy. It's like, people always want to say, oh, I want to meet you so we can sit down and talk about trans stuff. They'll never see me again because I won't do that, because I talk about trans stuff all the time. If you want to meet me and sit down and get to know each other, you'll meet me. But if somebody says that to me, I'm gone. And I'll be telling you the truth, and Luce has seen me do it. It's like, oh no, or I'll tell you directly. It's like, no, I'd rather do this because I'm a direct person, and I say, I'll tell you. So I think those things are important. And you also think about it, getting to know other people as well as learning about transness. But we don't live in the trans movement all the time. We need to get tools to live our real lives. And and then people go, oh, that makes sense after they bang their hips. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got you.
Try to do that. And they do that, and then they wonder why things are so toxic all the time. But you get it, and I know you get it because you're bright. But and not that they're not, but it's just that sometimes we keep banging our heads. So, all right, that's all I had to say. Thank you, sir.
Can I offer a brief word to those who choose to be mentors? Do your work. There is nothing worse for community than a toxic person mentoring an ignorant person. And ignorant, I don't mean stupid. I mean, they don't know. That's why they're coming to you for mentoring. But if you're not doing healing work, stop. I'm not saying you have to be perfect. None of us are. But part of the challenge is that someone has been, transitioned for 15 seconds and ready to mentor someone without a firm base of knowledge, and also without doing any work to unpack their own toxicity. That's hard. And what happens is it ripples out, and it affects this community member and that community member and this conference and that fraternity. It doesn't mean you need to be perfect, but be committed to doing your work. If you're going to be a mentor, and also know if you're not a good mentor. Like if that's not your thing, if that's not your way to give, don't say yes. Find your way to give and do that. I mean, Kyler talked about being a drill. I'm kind of a drill sergeant, but a kinder one, maybe. But, I think you have to know what your capacity is and what your gifts are. Your gifts you may not be a front counter person. You may be a back of house person. Just know what your gifts are and do that thing. Everybody doesn't need to be in the front. I'm fine being behind the scenes because that way I don't have to pretend to be all well put together. Somebody else can do that. But there are other people that, that's their place. That's their place in front of the microphone, in front of the camera. That's not my place. I go when I'm asked to be there, but that's not my comfort zone. My comfort zone, and people who know me know, is find me a place where I can have a good cup of coffee and we can talk. Mm-hmm. You got that? We're there, and I will take anybody's phone call or email or Facebook at any time of the day or night. I'm honored to be a part of the Akani system and available for mentorship as Maddox directs us. One of the other things about being an elder or OG is that we have to learn to be directed by the new leaders, which means we can't always be in charge of every damn thing. That's not our role. In Akani, Maddox is in charge. So I follow Maddox's direction. I don't direct Maddox on how to direct me. That's what it means to see leadership and support leadership in community.
Thank you. All right, got another question. All right. What are the emerging benefits of these national intergender dialogues between Black trans folks and the current racial climate in America?
Read the question again.
What are the what are the benefits of these national intergender dialogue between Black trans folks and the current racial climate in America? Do you see? Okay, hold on. Let me. I think what they're trying to ask is, do we see a need for an interdialogue conversation with Black trans women? Okay, I think that's what they're trying to ask.
I'm sorry, with Black trans women, was that the question?
Yeah, like they're asking. Yeah.
We've been in conversation with Black trans women forever. I think there's a new group of, not new, I don't mean brand new like this week, but I think there are some people who don't yet know the history of how well we have worked together for decades now. And, you know, again, when I get pushback from someone who maybe is newer to the movement and they're like, you're just mansplaining or whatever, and I might be, I will take a look at that. But I also can go back to, you know, Earlene Budd and Valerie Spencer and Dee Dee Chambly and say, look, here's the situation, correct me, you know, get me together if I'm messing up. But these relationships, we didn't have anybody else. Do you understand? Like now you can have a softball team for, like, you know, left-handed lesbians that are, you know, that wear one shoe. We didn't have that back in the day. We had one place, one conversation, one bar in town, one organization. So we all had to get together and we all had to get along. Now that we have the internet and everybody can have a specialized group, now we have these places where, like, we don't talk to them. Well, that's your fault. Talk to somebody. I don't think, and I think it's more, I think it needs to be more local than national, because often when it's national, it's for the appeal and the spotlight. When it's local, you try to figure out how you're going to live well where you live. It will bubble up to become national eventually, but when you start at the national, let me use an analogy, and I'm really a good one for bad analogies. If you lift from the feet, the whole body rises. If you lift from the head, you break your neck.
I got you.
Tap it again, Tyler. Tap it again.
Yeah, I think what the question is. I think this format right here was set up just for Black trans men. It was dedicated just for the elders of our community. It wasn't saying that it wasn't set up so we can exclude trans women or non-binary siblings, but we have not had a conversation with just the Black trans men. So that's why it was set up. So like I said, this is one of the first conversations that we were able to have with just this type of forum. So I don't want to think anyone thinks that we're excluding Black trans women or trans women period or our non-binary siblings. That's not the case. This was just something for us by us. Yes. Kyler, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Well, you addressed it. There's no need to. Lewis, and you addressed the question. So I don't believe in redundancy or talking just to talk, brother. You addressed it. Lewis addressed it. Let's move on. Because I was just going to go back to Lewis's point. We all had to play on the same team. You know, if you was going to whip somebody's behind, you was going to have to whip us all. So that's the way it went down. You know, trans man, trans woman, non-binary, whatever he was, we was all on the same team. So that's all. Go ahead, my brother.
All right. So ask one more question. Our last question is, sorry guys, it is any ideas for a cisgender ally and mental health therapist on how to best support Black trans men?
I'm going to jump in on this. Am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
No, you're not unmuted. We got you. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm not. Good. Well, I'm going to go back a little bit to what was said earlier by Reverend Lewis. One, I think for allies, you got to do your own work. You know, I remember holding down the POC spaces and Brother Lou was there at Creating Change for 10 years. And we would put and people would come in and the white people would come in the room and try to take over the space. And we spent all the time talking about white people in the POC space. This is kind of like that. and I don't mean to be rude, but I am direct and I'm being kind. If this space is for Black trans men to have space, we appreciate you being here. We would love to talk to you offline. But I think that because there has not been, and I do appreciate this space that is provided tonight, there has not been space for Black trans men to have, that we shouldn't take up Black trans men's space with this question. We are glad to talk to you offline. There are tons of resources that are going to be coming up online because, I know my group that I found, the Trans People of Color, is doing more transmasculine stuff. We kicked off in June with doing stuff, and other groups are, because there's not been presence. And then this young man here is doing great work. So I think following these groups, looking out for that kind of stuff, talking to us one-on-one, but I'm going to shut down with just that because, again, I think it takes up our space and nobody comes to the other parties' groups and asks that. I think, these are not appropriate for this space.
I totally agree. I thank y'all. So again, I don't want to take up too much time. We definitely had a great conversation. I think we all can agree that the call to action for our Black trans men, our Black brothers, is our health disparity, making sure that sex positive, PrEP, PEP, HIV, all these things are taken. I think that's our plan of action, and as well as knowing what everyone does. I want to make sure that before we close out, that Javon, Carter, Kyla, everyone knows where you are located and know the resources that your organization provides. Because I think that's also a missing component, is that people don't know where to go for what resources. Like Carter mentioned earlier, they have the COVID-19 resources. Some people didn't know that. Javon, you might have housing resources. We need to know where these things are. So before we close out, I want everyone to close out what they do and let everybody know what your resources are and where you are located, and we're gonna go from there. Javon, you go first, please.
Yeah, can I go? So I also want to add on to what you said about the health issues. Can we add GYN on there, because that is
oh yes, yeah.
Finding a safe space to go for GYN services. It's very important. So at Princess Janae Place, we provide referrals to housing, right? Permanent housing, right? Because we don't believe in the shelter system. Having a home, having a roof over your head is it's a human right. So the whole shelter population, put people in the shelter system, we're trying to eradicate that and just give people apartments and homes. We're building equity in the community, financial literacy training, so that people can understand what their FICO score is, and people can understand what their credit report looks like, right? And how to build credit, because for me as an individual, it wasn't taught to me growing up, right? I didn't get it, but now I get it. And we're also partnering with the neighborhood home assistant programs to get our people homes, right? So that they can have mortgages. And why are we paying rent? When that same amount that you're paying rent can go to owning a home, right? So we're learning about this, and we're building up the communities here in New York. So we are located in the Bronx, 2526 Wallace Avenue, and you can call the number 718-684-1688 and speak to Jessica. She answers the phone, and she will assist you with housing referrals, medical referrals, legal referrals, and mental health. Right. We also have homeless care packages that we give out to the chronic homeless and anyone that may need it. And we partner with the Ghost Project, the National Black Liberation Movement. We partner and definitely help Black Trans Men Inc., Black Trans Advocacy. That's where I came from. I said CK Life. We partner with a lot of the organizations. I'm sorry, Callan
This
Lord.
good. This I'll tell you. Everybody time, brother. Come on, 1 or 2 minutes.
Right.
So that we have the services. Just give us a call. All right, I'm out.
Thank you. Mr. Brodas. You're on. No, don't touch your talk. Just talk. You good.
Okay, good. I'm with Trans People of Color Coalition. We are national. We focus on more policy work nationally, but we also provide technical assistance to anybody in any state or locality. Last year we did the Buffalo City Ordinance, and then not only did we help them draft it, but then we provided press assistance and that sort of technical assistance for people that need statutes or ordinances written. So we provide that level of detail with policy work or policy changes or statute changes because we have that depth of policy skill. But also we can do trainings around any advocacy issue that people want to have because we have the depth of policy skill. So if you need lobby day trainings of that sort of thing. And we initially hosted the National Lobby Days with NCTE, but those barriers have been broken. So we really don't do that much anymore there. But we also do several things like when tackle national issues that impact specifically trans people of color, like the trans military ban, which shows that there are more trans people in the military. That also coalesces with there are more Black people in the military. So that, that we look for trans POC, but there are more Black people in the military than there are any other people, and there are more trans people in the military, so that crosses over. So we help with find cases as well as pull out military soldiers and build those up. Those are some of the latest things we've done. We kind of pick and choose. We did a special project with Witness on the hate and murder crimes, and we still work those, sadly. I've actually worked crime scenes with several police stations and including the DC Metro Police Station where our main office is located. And, we definitely recognize the deaths and try to do those and try to bring national attention to them and highlight them so that we can get resolution and some kind of calculus to figure out what's going on. That's like a thimble of what we do. We do several things. A big thing is educate other communities that follow us. We have a ton of groups that follow us and a ton of people that follow us on Facebook that feed off the news that we put out. So that's what we do. We love what we do, and that will be it for now.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
Okay. Again, Carter Brown, Black Trans Advocacy Coalition. That's blactrans.org. Currently, what we're offering up to the community in the midst of COVID is the COVID Rapid Relief Fund, which includes an opportunity to receive up to $125 direct. First, let me back up and say that this is primarily for the trans community. Those who are experiencing difficulties as a direct result of COVID, we have an opportunity for you to receive up to $125 direct micro grant to support you and your utility bills, rent, phone, transportation, whatever your basic needs are. We also have basic need or hygiene care packages that we can send to you if you need basic necessities, as well as safe sex supplies. All of these are free if you just go to blactrans.org and complete the application. Black Trans Men Inc. is an arm of Black Trans Advocacy Coalition, and we do outreach specifically to Black trans men. Our website is blactransmen.org, and that's where you can go to sign up for our men's mentoring program, as well as find out more information of the services that we offer around leadership development for Black trans men, as well as offering up resources for housing, health, and employment.
Thank you. And we're going to close it out with Reverend.
Greetings all. I work at the Ingersoll Gender Center, INGERSOLL Gender Center in Seattle, Washington. We serve trans people in the Seattle region, including outlying counties. Please do be in touch. We offer resources during COVID, but we offer resources before and after COVID as well. Medical, housing, references, support. When I say housing, we don't provide housing, but we refer. And also Transfaith, www.transfaith.org. And I want to lift up that we, even as we speak right now, there is the Black Trans Prayer Book, which is having their release party on another Zoom somewhere. We're excited to be supporting the Black Trans Prayer Book. And we also have an arm of Transfaith, Otherwise, with a capital W, publishing. For those of you that are people of faith, Christians particularly, but not exclusively, check out some of our publications, including our most recent one by Jonathan Thunderword. We are really supporting getting our voices out there in print. There is a rumor that I'm actually working on a book right now, so we shall see how that goes, because I'm trying to squeeze that in my 35 seconds of spare time, but I'm going to do the work. And I want to just say, if I can be helpful to you, certainly you can reach out to me personally. You can find me on Facebook. If mentorship is interesting, please reach out to Akani. I am on their menu as they see fit, but you don't have to do this by yourself ever. Someone is a good fit to support you.
Thank you. So my name is T.Y. Williams. I'm the project coordinator for Community Education Group, as well as a member of Alpha Omega Kappa Fraternity Incorporated, which is a trans masculine fraternity. Just here to help and want to make sure our voices are definitely heard. Again, I want to let everyone know thank you to our tremendous, phenomenal panel of elders and leaders of our communities, and want you to know that this is the first conversation, but it's not going to be the last conversation. And we look forward from hearing from you. And guess what? The work will continue, and the tea will not be silenced. Thank you all, and have a great night.
Okay.